Hello, everyone, and welcome to the moment we've been leading up to this entire award season. Our final Oscar winner predictions. Oscars day of recording are coming out in 5 days. We're going to find out who's going to be winning. It's been a pretty chaotic season thus far, I would say, compared to most seasons, but I think it's settled down a little bit in a lot of categories. There are some that it has not, that are crazy unpredictable, that we'll get into. But yeah, Anthony, any thoughts before we head into each category?
Let's just jump into this.
Yes, and so throughout this video, we are going to be using as our reference in terms of the odds and who may be up front. We're going to be referencing KALSHI. KALSHI is the first and only legal prediction market in the U.S. After years of working with the federal government, KALSHI got regulatory approval from the CFTC to offer a new asset class, event contracts, which allow traders to take positions on whether a future event will happen or not. You can bet on pretty much anything on KALSHI's different award shows like the Grammys, different politics things, Bitcoin, all that stuff. But what we're referencing here and what you guys, I'm sure, will be interested in potentially making some bets on, making some predictions on are the awards shows you can predict for the Oscars upcoming. And there are some interesting odds here that we'll get into for the categories that they cover. And if you have a gut feeling, there are some categories here where I'm going against the odds and you feel like that's going to work out. You don't have to be the winners at the Oscars don't have to be the only winners this year. You yourself can win as well if you bet on KALSHI and bet properly. So yeah, check it out. Use the code OscarFilmFC. On a few of the categories me and Anthony disagree on here, may make a few bets ourselves. So yeah, without further ado, starting off with the shorts, always everyone's favorite categories. They make or break your predictions here. Live action short film, our nominees are Alien, however you say it, Anuja, I'm Not a Robot, The Last Ranger, and The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent.
On KALSHI, in the odds for best live action short, we've got Alien in the lead with 40%, but it's a close race with The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, close behind with 32%.
I think something you have to keep in mind with all of these short categories, there are a few things that give you an advantage. Being English language is a huge advantage. It's very rare, not super common for in all the short categories to have a non-English language film win here. You should either be heartwarming, I think, like make people feel something, or like be important, an important topic, one of those two. And also you tend to also have a better shot if you've got a kid or an animal in your film, it seems. So those are my rules. Yes, those are my rules when it comes to these categories. So without further ado, our predicted winners, we agree on this one. Alien. I think when you just look at what is considered, I would say, the most topical here, I would say it's Alien. It's about a father and a father who's an illegal immigrant who goes to like get his paperwork done, and then there's a raid done by ICE at the facility he's at. He's there with his daughter. It feels very, considering all of what's going on in the world, very topical and what they would probably go for. I think so. I'm just looking at the other ones. The Man Who Cannot Remain Silent is another topical one as well. It is not in English language, so I do think that hurts it. But it's about the Palestine-Israel conflict and all of that. So that's where I'm leaning. Any thoughts on this, Anthony? These are sometimes just shots in the dark, but I feel pretty decent about this one.
Yeah, I think that it's the only film, I believe, that's completely in the English language, which I think does help it within this race. I do agree that the subject matter is potent for now, potent for any time, but especially now. And so that's in the end why I'm leaning that way. I would say that the alternative, I think, is Anuja, just because that's also a Netflix short, very powerful film. It actually won at a short film festival that my short film was in. So it would be nice to say I lost to the Oscar winner.
Yeah.
But
it's centered around a kid, which always helps.
So, but yeah, I think for the reasons we said about Alien, I'm going to go with that. So yeah, I think I'm always like, the thing is that I'm always semi-confident in like, yeah, this makes sense. These reasonings
makes sense.
I mean, these are the categories where the number 5 could be the number 1. I mean, that's how, flippant, this is what happens when, the months of campaigning that benefit the feature films. They don't tend to do that for the shorts, which means that, you kind of just go off vibes. Sometimes the title, we'll get to animated shorts. Sometimes the title does more than anything to get it that win.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Moving on now to documentary short. Our nominees are Death by Numbers, I Am Ready, Warden, Incident, Instruments of a Beating Heart, and The Only Girl in the Orchestra.
Over on KALSHI for documentary short, we've got I Am Ready Warden in the lead with 42%. Then we've got Instant with 26%, and then The Only Girl in the Orchestra with 25%.
And we are in agreement once again with The Only Girl in the Orchestra as our predicted winner. This was an interesting group to me. I feel like The Only Girl in the Orchestra fits with some past winners, kind of like Queen of Basketball, or even just last year, The Last Repair Shop, another like orchestra movie, where it's centered around the first woman who performed, I believe, in the Philharmonic Orchestra. I forget the exact orchestra. She was trained by Leonard Bernstein. It's kind of supposedly like a feel-good movie, but she's a kind of more of like a cold subject. She isn't the most emotional person. But just looking at the other alternatives here, I just like, I mean, Incident, I feel like probably based off what I've read is maybe the best one here. It's like a police, it's a short film completely composed of like police body cams about a wrong murder of a black barbershop by the police officers. But that just feels maybe a little too experimental to me. Instruments of a Beating Heart is not in the English language, but that is more of like a feel-good film. Death by Numbers, I think, would be my number 2 here, just because it is once again like an important subject matter, and it's about like school shootings and all that stuff. But I feel like there's more like with Death by Numbers, I Am Ready Warden, and Instant, more of like the darker stuff that I think kind of gives Only Girl in the Orchestra maybe a little bit of an advantage here.
It has
some of the past stuff they do.
And it has the Netflix component. It's the Netflix short. So that's another reason why I was leaning toward it. It's the New York Philharmonic. Definitely a prestigious institution of music. And so I think for those reasons, I think it makes sense that this would win documentary short. I would love maybe in the off season we can look at, is documentary short and documentary feature, do they ever work in tandem? Like do they go in different directions as far as tone and genre? If we're going for a serious documentary, do we go for a lighter documentary short? I'm probably giving that way too much thought, as if there's any correlation. But you gotta when you're just going off vibes, and that I think that Only Girl in the Orchestra makes sense.
It's another good title too, and I think most people, in my opinion, probably abstain from these categories. I think most of the people who do vote probably see them, but a title does always help as well, and so does Netflix. So that's what we're going with there. Our final short category: Best Animated Short Film. We've got Beautiful Men, In the Shadow of the Cypress, Magic Candies, Wander to Wonder, and Yuck.
For Best Animated Short Film over on KALSHI, we've got Wander to Wonder in the lead with 50%, followed by Beautiful Men with 20%, and Yuck with 17%.
And it's our first time we are disagreeing here. I'm going with Yuck, and Anthony is going with Wander to Wonder. I'm just thinking, Yuck is not, I believe Wander to Wonder is the only fully English language film here. It also has done well with precursors. It like won the BAFTA award. It's won a few different awards that Yuck has not.
Toby Jones is one of the voice actors, I believe, who is Dobby for, he says many credits, but I think the one closest to my heart is Dobby. So, there's a little bit of a celebrity component with that one.
Yeah, I just feel like looking at these options, I feel like Yuck is like the most crowd-pleasing one. I feel like it's the most simple one. I feel like Wander to Wonder is a little too weird from what I've seen about it. It's like a very weird short film that I feel like when they watch all these films, Yuck is probably just going to like leave them with the like best feeling. It's the most, I would say, straightforward one. It's got good animation from what I've seen. It's like a subject matter I think most people can relate to. So that's why I'm going with that. I don't feel super confident about it, but I just something about Wander to Wonder makes sense, like statistically based off the precursors and stuff like that. But something about that are too weird to me for it to end up winning. So yeah, that's why I'm going with Yuck, which I do think once again is the standout title of all of them.
That's for sure. The title would do a lot for that one. I will just take you back to 2021 because I will not forget this because it was my favorite short, and I felt sorry for doubting it, which was The Windshield Wiper, which did win. It was a little bit more experimental, a little bit more less kid-friendly. Everybody was predicting Robin because that was the one that was Netflix, and it was, this kind of like, I don't know if it was a holiday short, but it kind of played like a holiday short because it was, these cute animals, and they I think released it around the holidays. But it lost to Windshield Wiper. So I think that it's proof that sometimes the simplest, the most direct, and maybe the more kid-friendly one doesn't always win animated short. But again, like, I mean, I could see Obviously, I could see Wander to Wonder winning. I could see Beautiful Men winning. I think more than the other two shorts, this is one where I'm not going to be as surprised if any of them get said aloud. I think the distance between the nominees are a little bit more narrow here than the other categories.
Yeah, Beautiful Men seems maybe like another one that's maybe a little too weird to me. I believe it would be the first animated short with like claymation penises in it to win. So I'm not completely sure.
Hey, Best Picture is going to a movie all about a stripper. So you never, maybe this is
true. It's true. It wasn't My Year of Dicks didn't win. Oh wait, did it win though? My Year? No, it didn't. It was just nominated. No. So yeah, and I think also In the Shadow of the Cypress is a silent film, so it doesn't have like the non-English language factor going against it completely. And I think, in my opinion, it's got the most beautiful animation of all of them from what I saw. So that could also potentially be a winner here. I would say it's one of those three, but I'm keeping it simple. We'll see how that pans out. That will make or break everyone's ballot. But moving on to Best Original Song, we've got El Mal from Emilia Perez, The Journey from 6888, Like a Bird from Sing Sing, Mi Camino from Emilia Perez, and Never Too Late from Elton John, Never Too Late.
Over on KALSHI for Best Original Song, we've got El Mal clearly up front and in the lead with 75%, followed by Diane Warren's The Journey songs from the 6888 with 14%, and Mi Camino with 8%.
It's a pretty easy one for both of us. It's been El Mal the entire season. It won Critics' Choice. It won Golden Globe. It's won pretty much everything that it could have. I don't even, what would number 2 here even be? Diane Warren?
I think it might be Diane Warren.
Yeah.
Is it too late to clip out the section of One Short Day in Wicked where Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel and something and put that as original song?
I think it is too late. Yeah, I'm afraid it is.
So right in. I think this is, again, I think what we're going to have to recognize, and we'll get to this when we talk about international feature, is that despite Carlos Sofia Gaston's controversy, Emilia Perez is still the most nominated film of the year, and it's not going to go 0 for 13. It's going to have a presence. It will not have the same presence it could have had, but yeah, this is one where I think it is surely going to be for Emilia Perez. And yeah, it's crazy when you look at this year's crop versus any other year's crop. It really does feel like the songs this year weren't as.
No wonder they're not performing them.
Yeah, which I feel because I feel like you shouldn't, like, if you do it one year you should do it, but I also don't know if we really should do it. I've always felt like maybe do a medley of all of them, like have like all 5 songs, do like some like a Super Bowl halftime type performance, and that way you don't have to waste 30 minutes of your show. You can waste 10 minutes. And it's not a waste, it's a part of films, and some of my favorite moments of Oscars past.
They're mostly credit songs. Yeah, but
yeah, I think this year it makes sense why we're leaning with the Wicked medley over this.
Yes, or if there was a different Emilia Perez song, I would go with La Vaginoplastia. Personally, it has been nominated at our awards show. But I think also it helps. I think most of the times if you have 2 nominations in the song categories, usually one of them wins, like La La Land or Barbie. So it will be Emilia Perez and will be El Mal. We've got Best Original Score. We've got The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot.
Over on KALSHI for Best Original Score, we've got The Brutalist safely out front with 83%, followed by Conclave with 10%, and The Wild Robot with 9%.
Another pretty predictable category, I would say, with The Brutalist winning. He won the BAFTA award. I'm thinking what other precursors there even are. He won the BAFTA. He won the Golden Globe. No, he didn't win the Golden Globe. Most of the precursors have gone to challengers, and then BAFTA was the only place that didn't nominate challengers, and then Brutalist won here. And at the Oscars, challengers is not nominated, and Brutalist is, I would say, the front runner. It's a showy score. The other alternative, I would say, is probably Conclave, but I don't completely see that happening. I feel like the Brutalist kind of has this pretty safely locked up.
I mean, if Wicked's going to go the path of Black Panther, then it could win this one as well, the same way Black Panther won costume, production design, and score. Because I really don't know if Academy voters realize how much is from the musical versus how much is from the movie. And the movie, I do think, to its credit, has a fair number of new themes, improved themes. So it's a nomination I understand and I'm happy to see. So I could see that winning. But I do think ultimately The Brutalist, similarly to All Quiet on the Western Front, I think has a certain theme that is very noticeable in the film. And I think it's the most like prestige-y score of this 5. So I think I'm going to go Brutalist, but I would not I would warn people that I do, I remember 2018 and everybody was saying If Beale Street Could Talk, Nicholas Britell, it's, the most, independent darling score. And then Black Panther came out of nowhere and surprised people. So I do think, look out for Wicked to surprise. That being said, I'm going brutalist.
Yeah. I also saw someone say brought up Elvis a few years ago, how Elvis, we went into it thinking it's going to win an acting category, it's going to win a few techs, and none of that ended up happening. So I don't think that will happen for Brutalist, but it's something worth keeping an eye on because I don't think it's locked up in any of its categories personally. So
not even actors.
No, we'll get to it. I think there's a race in all of those there. But yeah, I think this is probably its safest win, I would say, of the ones.
I think there's another tech that I would say is.
There's another. I think they're close in terms of how safe they are. But yeah. Best sound. This is an interesting one. We got A Complete Unknown, Dune Part 2, Emilia, Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. We are both going with Dune here, but part of me is thinking Dune has been underperforming this entire season. Is it completely just locked up? I believe the CAS award went to A Complete Unknown. MPSE went to Dune, Wicked, and Wild Robot for their separate categories. Dune won the BAFTA, and then I'll continue with a lot of these categories, especially the techs. BAFTA is pretty consistent. Last year, if you just predicted the BAFTA winners in the tech categories, you would have gone pretty much perfect. So I do think they're the most predictive. So I'm just going to go with Dune Part 2, but part of me is looking, we'll get to it in a separate category as well. I think Wicked could potentially surprise in some of these places. I think outside of the two safe ones it could have, I think it could potentially pick up another one because it is clearly stronger than Dune in this category. It is the bigger, more celebrated blockbuster here. And I do think it might split votes though with we've got three different music-centric sound films here. And then Dune kind of stands out as the sci-fi one. So I think that helps it too.
Yeah, I'm curious what Kalshi is thinking with this category, because I feel like I could see Wicked surprise because it has the musical elements and the action elements. But I could also just see people feeling like this is like visual effects. This is just one you check off for Dune. One of the, especially given a lot of the, this is in many ways a louder movie than the first one. And, a lot of the sandworm sequences, the war sequences, and, of course, balancing the dialogue and the score, the crowd scenes. There's a lot here that wasn't necessarily in the first film, so it definitely would be worthy. But I also don't know if Academy voters are thinking that specifically about what makes this film sound different from Part 1. So we'll see.
Yeah. So on Kalshi for best sound, leading up is Dune with 65%, and right behind it is A Complete Unknown with 22%, and Wicked with 17%. So it's far from a far and away front runner here. I do think there is definitely a race. But I would agree. I would honestly agree with those odds in general. I think Dune is up front. I would actually have Wicked above A Complete Unknown, but I think if there's an upset, it would be one of those two. So
yeah, I mean, A Complete Unknown is definitely in that top three. I just don't. It's the type of thing I could see happening, but I also feel like, let's say it's it's Monday, the Oscars have happened, and A Complete Unknown didn't win. I would be like, yeah, I mean, what's the sound? He stands on a, I know they talk about turning off the amps in that one sequence, but he just stands in front of the stage. I don't know generally what the feat of sound design is being achieved. When you look at Dune, you look at Wicked, look at The Wild Robot, you look at Flow, which unfortunately was not nominated. They're having to either put sound in movies in a new way or have to literally create sounds for things that don't exist. I feel like that's a bigger feat than, movie has microphone.
Yeah, true. I think some of it might just depend on how beloved the movie is, but I do think it's kind of undeniable in a way. So moving along to best visual effects, we've got Alien Romulus, Better Man, Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. And the odds here are pretty high on Kalshi with 91%. I wonder if that's the highest of any of the categories here for Dune Part 2, with then Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and Wicked right behind it. Obviously, we agree this is a pretty locked up category, I would say. I don't even number two is maybe the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movies, but they always seem to be runner up in these categories. Wicked is the only other Best Picture nominee, but I think Dune is clearly the better visual effects of the two. So I don't know how much there's to talk about here. It's very much clearly Dune.
I'm very upset that given the filming schedules, I don't think we're ever going to have a year where Avatar and Dune are released concurrently, and they're have to go head to head in this category.
They're just trading back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Maybe if it's 2028, maybe that's when we'll get Dune Messiah. We'll see.
I think Dune Messiah is coming out next year, though.
Yeah, I mean, if they can get that turnaround real quick, I would be very, very happy. Brought us on a tangent because there's nothing else to say. It's undeniable.
Yeah. Well, I think 6/10 of this decade will be Dune and Avatar winners. So there we go.
Fantastic. Last decade, it was the Mexican-born directors, right? And because we went from Alfonso Cuarón to Alejandro Inarritu to Guillermo del Toro, and then Damien Chazelle, and like that's this year's version of that is
with Godzilla in the middle. Yeah,
Godzilla is our Damien Chazelle.
Yeah, he is. Moving along to Best Makeup and Hairstyling, we've got A Different Man, Emilia, Perez, Nosferatu, The Substance, and Wicked. On KALSHI, this is another one where the odds are very much in The Substance's favor, with 89% in the lead, and right behind would be Wicked and Nosferatu. Some of these tech categories were pretty easy. We very much so agree with that. It's pretty clearly going to be The Substance. Whether or not it comes along with an acting win, we'll get into in a second.
And so, like, I worry about makeup because, like, it is disgusting. Like, it's great. But I could see it turning people off. But I think that
they don't usually go for gross makeup. It's usually like biopic.
Period. So the fact that it's here, it's proven to be against the odds this entire season. And I do think we'll get to Best Actress. Just like last year, which I think, honestly, Poor Things kind of fits a little bit into the quirky, a little disturbing thing. And, of course, that went along with an acting wins with Emma Stone.
To Best Costume Design, we've got A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. And over on KALSHI, in the lead, this is even higher than Dune for visual effects. We've got Wicked with 92% of the lead here. I think, obviously, we agree this is pretty locked up. I forget what's the costume designer's name? He's like
Paul Tazwell. He did Hamilton on Broadway. I just saw Death Becomes Her on Broadway, which he did the costumes for. Very fun, sexy, Real Housewives-esque. It's like Real Housewives entered Agatha All Along type costume. So he has such a range, and I'm very, very much looking forward to him winning. So yeah, I think obviously he created a world. He made. I've been saying about this Wicked in general, but the fact that Wicked took one of the most iconic movies, maybe the most iconic movie ever made, and made it its own version of iconic, and definitely more iconic for this era. Yeah, I think this really wins. And I would say we can jump into production design. I do think costume design is the more stable one. If one is going to not go in Wicked's way and kind of surprise in the way that La La Land didn't win costume design.
I'd agree. So production design, we've got The Brutalist, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. And in the lead on KALSHI, we've got Wicked, which agrees with you, much less of a lead with 79%. Second place, Brutalist with 10%, and then Nosferatu. I agree. We both agree here. Wicked is going to be winning this category, but it is less stable. I would say Brutalist is probably number 2, but I honestly don't think Brutalist is that strong. Like if Brutalist was like running up, like even runner-up for Best Picture and getting close to it, I would say maybe it could win here. But I don't think it is. And this is Nathan something who has like 5 or 6 nominations. He's never
won Crowley, this is his 7th nomination, going all the way back to The Prestige. He did Dark Knight. He did Interstellar. He did First Man. So he's definitely been around. I don't know how many of the voters know that, but hopefully they impressed upon the importance of this as a great artisan and deserves this honor. I mean, listen, they created a world, as I said. They took an iconic world, made it their own. I think they get a lot of points for that. The commitment to the practical. I really think, listen, it makes the movie better. And every time I see that shot, I get a little giddy seeing the 9 million flowers. But I think they planted those 9 million flowers to win this category. I think it's a very easy thing to say. We planted 9 million flowers. Statue, please.
Christopher Nolan walked, so they could run.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's what happens. They talked up how grueling the makeup process was for The Grinch that year, and that was totally to try and show that we deserve this award. I think, every frame of Wicked is proof that it deserves a production design award. I think that this is, again, I think when you mentioned probably a month ago at this time, that Wicked is just going the route of Black Panther. I think that is exactly what's going to happen. It gets points for creating this world.
On to the bane of my existence in one of these categories. Best film editing.
Really?
Our nominees. This one is really throwing me. We've got Anora, The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia, Perez, and Wicked. Over on Kalshi, we've got Conclave in the lead with 59%, then Anora with 31%, followed by The Brutalist. I'm going with Conclave here. The precursors here aren't helpful at all because Challengers has won pretty much all of the critic stuff. Obviously, for some reason, Challengers then not nominated at the BAFTAs, and then the BAFTA went for Conclave. And like I've been saying, if you just go with the BAFTA winners in the tech categories, you'll probably do well. You might miss one or two, but they seem to be pretty consistent in terms of their crossover with what happens at the Oscars. So I'm going with Conclave, but I could see any of these four listed here winning. I do think Emilia Perez, even though it's fallen off a little bit, in my opinion, it is by far and away the most showy editing for what they tend to go for. And I think it is the most, it's often what they go for in this category is the most editing. And that is, I would say, Emilia Perez in this case. And Wicked, I don't know, something about it, like especially if it like does surprise in sound or something, it's a blockbuster. I don't know. I think it could potentially surprise here. And I mean, Anora makes sense as well if going along with the Best Picture win. I just feel like, one, I don't want to give Sean Baker. I feel like he's not going to go home with 4 Oscars, in my opinion. We'll see. And I think one of the big complaints of that film, I think, is the editing. It slows down in the second half. So I don't know. I'm going with Conclave. I do think it is a tighter edit compared to all of these other films. I think that helps it. And I think it's like the scene where they're all like voting for the Pope and you like cut back and forth to all of them. And it's good editing. So I'm going with that, but I'm not confident in it at all. You're going with Anora. That's probably my number 2.
Well, I'm curious. So are you going with Conclave solely based off the BAFTA win? Is that your
based off the BAFTA win? And I think it has the least, when I look at these 4, I think it has, in terms of the people, when they talk about the film, the least complaints about the editing. I've heard complaints about all those other 3 films editing, and I've not heard complaints about
I kind of
editing.
I feel like complaints about editing do not end you in this category because Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Film Editing, and then had the most, probably the last 10 years of editing. In the end, just I would caution, because if we'll get to it, but if we think Anora is going to do very well in Best Picture, probably better than Conclave, then I think this is your
Best Picture and editing don't like always. They did the last 2 years, but I think before that, the last Best Picture winner that also won editing was Argo. So it's not like they always go together. Yeah, usually they don't.
But I think that Conclave winning editing at BAFTA, and then it was also because it was part of the package of winning Best Picture. So I wouldn't put too much in that. It is a way to give the film something outside of screenplay. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know. I think I really want to know what the thought process is for Oscar voters in picking editing. Is it the most quick cuts? Is it the most noticeable editing?
Is it just their favorite?
Looking at it as a craft, as the artistry of editing, I think Anora being able to walk the tonal lines it does is solely in the editing. How long you hold on a shot determines if it's a drama or a comedic beat. And so I think there's a lot of resonance to that. And I would also argue that some of the wandering of the second act of Anora is purposeful, and that's, again, an achievement to the editing. So I don't know. I think that Conclave could win. I wouldn't be surprised. It is the most traditionally edited out of these 5. But I think Anora could make Sean Baker's night very, very happy.
It also does make sense.
His name is not on the ballot, so they're not. I don't think.
I think most people know he edited, though. I feel like he's been very open about.
I would not say most. Maybe half know he edited.
Half, a good chunk of the people. I don't know how much that detracts them from voting for him either. But I do. It does make sense, like you said. Conclave won Best Film at BAFTA, so then it won Best Editing. So if Anora wins Best Film here, it might win Best Editing. But I don't know. I just feel like Conclave is the tighter edit, and I feel like the BAFTA win, because that's really the only precursor we have that can help us here. Nothing else. ACE is happening like 2 weeks after the Oscars. Very helpful. Thank you guys. So it's really the only precursor we have to go off. So that's what I'm going with, but I don't feel confident in it at all. I could switch to Anora, but we'll see. I'm not giving Sean Baker 4 Oscars, so we'll get to that in a second. It's possible.
Like family pet?
No, it just never happened before, and the last time it happened was Walt Disney, and it was for separate films.
Every year and say that there is something that happened that year that never happened before. I mean, you go back, I know 2 years ago, you could have said Everything Everywhere. No movie has ever had that performance in an above the line categories, and then it did. The year before, Coda winning 3 for 3. There's always something new. And if this year the thing that's new is that one person, Sean Baker, what is it, matches Walt Disney's record and wins 4 in one night, that would be.
Yeah, but those were for separate films for Walt. They weren't all for Walt.
I grant you, but again, Anora is proving to be the least offensive movie. It's the most inoffensive. And I think that it's a comedy, it's a drama, it's an independent film, it's a romance. It has, it just appeals to people. And I think that if it goes this way, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah, no, I won't be surprised either. I think it's probably one of those two. But I would, once again, I'm surprised I'm the one saying I would look out for Wicked in particular here. I do think that's potential of happening, especially if it takes sound early on. I would say it might get editing. So moving along to cinematography, our nominees are The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Emilia, Perez, Maria, and Nosferatu. And the odds on Kalshi, we've got The Brutalist up front with 80%, followed by Nosferatu and Dune Part 2. We both agree here. The Brutalist is probably going to be winning this. The precursors here I've gone to pretty much separate people everywhere, but once again, BAFTA went to Brutalist. BAFTA is the most consistent in terms of crossover, so I'm going to go with that. It's also the Best Picture nominee here. I think its biggest competition are Maria and Nosferatu, probably. Maria just won the ASC. It's got the Ed Lockman factor, but I don't think that's would have to be a Roger Deakins like Blade Runner 2049 thing, where he just sweeps the entire season for that to happen for a film that's not in Best Picture and not super seen. So I don't think that's going to happen. And Nosferatu, once again, not in Best Picture, not as strong. So I just think it's going to be The Brutalist. With the whole Best Division thing and everything, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I think I do think there's going to be there's going to be an inclination to give The Brutalist something because I don't know how, other than Adrian Brody, I don't know where else it's going to have a lot of support. We talked about score. That's one place. I think this is another place. And I do think cinematography in particular, I think the whole they made this movie for $10 million narrative. I think that's really struck a chord with people, especially coming off of Cord Jefferson's award speech last year for American Fiction that we both responded to very strongly. I think this is the representation of that. The fact that the movie looks this good for 10 million is, I think, the epitome of that comment, coming to fruition. So that's why I think it will win cinematography.
Agreed. Pretty simple there. Best Animated Feature Film. We're getting into the feature films. Our nominees are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. On Kalshi, up in the front is The Wild Robot with 72%, followed by Flow with 30%, and then Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. We agree here. Anthony did make a last-minute switch here, so he had Flow until a little bit ago. I'm not. It's interesting. I don't feel that close.
Is this not like a 51-49 split for you?
I feel like I needed to see it win the BAFTA personally, and it might have been number 2 because they love Wallace and Gromit so much. But I just feel like it only has the Golden Globe, and I know lots of people will bring up last year's race, but last year it was Miyazaki who won also the BAFTA and the Golden Globe. He's Miyazaki. Unfortunately, Flow does not have the Miyazaki factor to it, that name factor, and also it was going up against a sequel superhero animated Part 1 film, whereas The Wild Robot it's based off of film, but it's seen as like an original first part, which helps it. It's done by Chris, based off a book. Chris Sanders, who has done never won in this category before, very respected. How to Train Your Dragon, Lilo and Stitch.
I grant you,
makes sense to me.
If Wild Robot wins, I will not be surprised. It's a deserving winner. It's a beautiful film, and it has Kit Connor in it. So you're definitely there's a lot that I'm rooting for. But I don't know. Flow has really I think they released on Max at the perfect time. And I do think that there's been a lot more talk about this movie than I necessarily thought there would be. A lot of people champion it. It is also represented in the international feature category, so it has a bigger platform. The one thing is that I look to Flea as a potential comp. Flea was nominated in animated, documentary, and international feature. It was a stunning, performance at the nomination level, but it maybe split its support among those 3 categories, and B, it was going up against a movie that was just a little bit more popular. And I do think The Wild Robot is a more popular movie. More people probably saw it than Flow, but I don't know. I'm really close to going to Flow because I do think that people look at Flow as a pure work of art, and I think if people respond to it strongly, I also think that a lot of times these sort of movies like Flea, I Lost My Body. These are movies that are more geared towards older audiences. Waltz with Bashir, where Flow is a movie that anybody can watch. So I'm really close, but I think also Wild Robots has had such a demonstrative performance at the Annies, and that's often a good precursor. So it's hard. But this is, I honestly think this is probably the closest animated feature. Wow. This may be the closest that animated feature has ever been since it started with Monsters Inc. for Shrek. I think it is like, I would love to know the tallies on this. I really think it's that close.
Yeah, I do think Flow is very strong. I think the rollout of it has been incredible. It has gained a lot more attention, and it did great with the critics groups. I think it did even better than most people expected. And I feel like if this was like a smaller group of people voting on it, yes, it probably would be Flow. I just feel like when you expand it to everyone, I think sometimes we forget with all the online love for Flow how much people really responded to the Wild Robot as well. Like, made people cry. It's on lots of people's like top 10 favorite films of the year. And it's just, I think it's more traditional. And I think when you expand it to everyone else, and like lots of people going for what their kids like, I feel like Wild Robot just makes a little more sense to me. I mean, Flow really just has a Golden Globe, and plenty of films have just won the Golden Globe and then never won, like Missing Link at the Oscars.
No, so, again, if Wild Robot wins, it's not going to be a surprise. I just get the energy and the vibes off of it that like Wild Robot feels like Incredibles 2, which like going into like January we thought, oh yeah, Incredibles 2 is going to win, and then Spider-Verse surprised because there was like real passion there. And I feel like that could happen again, where Wild Robot felt like the expected winner as soon as award season started. Once people saw it, we were like, yeah, Wild Robot. Goodbye Inside Out 2, as much as you're great. But I don't. It's really tough. You should check both of ours awards experts like an hour before just to see what we.
Yeah, see if we. I shouldn't do that just because I did that right before the SAG Awards and it screwed me over. Yeah. So I think go with your gut is what usually I tend to try and stick to, but we'll see. Yeah, so that's animated feature. We're both going Wild Robot. Next up, documentary feature film. We've got Black Box Diaries, No Other Land, Porcelain War, soundtrack to a coup d'etat, and Sugarcane. On KALSHI in the lead here is No Other Land with 57%. And behind it is Porcelain War with 34%, and then Sugarcane right after. I am going against the odds here. I am going with Porcelain War. You are going with No Other Land. No Other Land makes sense in terms of like what's getting a lot of the buzz online, what lots of people like in critics groups and online's favorites are. It still has no distributor. I just think the subject matter, when I look, Porcelain War, they're both about wars going on in the world right now. Porcelain War is about the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and No Other Land is about the Palestine-Israel conflict. And I feel like when you look, I just feel like, unfortunately, when you look especially at like the response in the Academy to Jonathan Glazer's speech last year and how many people were upset by that, and I just unfortunately think that conflict is a more divisive conflict amongst people than I think the Ukraine-Russia conflict, but I think more people in the Academy especially are pretty unanimously agreed upon. Porcelain War has also won, I believe it won either DGA or PGA. It's won some of the Guild Awards. No Other Land has not won. No Other Land has won some of the like the critics stuff, but that doesn't always mean anything. It didn't win the BAFTA, which I think was a big miss. So the Christopher Reeve Superman film won there. So I just look at the two films here. One has like an industry award already to it, and it's less about a less, unfortunately, controversial subject matter. And No Other Land, still no distributor, kind of just throws me off. Like, no one in Hollywood was willing to pick this film up. Just kind of speaks to me in a way like, I don't know if they're going to go for it. I feel like it might be easier to get people to watch something like Porcelain War than it would be No Other Land.
Make a good argument. Because I do think that what you're saying is true. I also think that when Oscar voting was happening was around the time that President Trump was leaning towards his support of Russia and Putin and kind of around, I don't know if he was calling Zelensky a dictator around that time, but you know, that was the atmosphere where people were voting. I bring it up because I do think there are some people that might figure into it. I remember in this category, everybody was predicting Faces Places in 2018, and Icarus won because we were just coming off of the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. So I do think that current events can be indicative of what wins documentary, and Porcelain War might just be a little bit more packaged in a way than No Other Land. So I do think you would agree that it's down to these two.
I think so, yeah.
All right, you might have swayed me. I think I'm going to go Porcelain War.
Okay, we have our first sway of the night. We've been pretty unanimous so far, so we'll see how that continues. But yeah,
I would love if somebody could actually calculate how many hours we talk to each other. Like if we're not
Yeah,
after all
someone
this
should count.
time, like
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah,
Christ. Oh God.
yeah. True that. Our last feature category here, international feature film. We've got I'm Still Here, The Girl with the Needle, Emilia Perez, The Seed of the Sacred Pig, and Flow on KALSHI. This is a closer one. I'm Still Here is up front with 59%, then followed by Emilia Perez with 39% and Flow with 3%. So it's clearly between Emilia Perez and I'm Still Here. And this is another one that Anthony made a little last minute switch on. We both are going with I'm Still Here. The nothing statistic or past or precursor wise says that we should. Everything is pointing towards Emilia Perez. Every branch liked it. It got 13 nominations. Everyone clearly, I just feel clearly liked it at the time of nomination voting. I just feel like you kind of have to vibe out, feel the vibe of the moment right now. And I feel like Emilia Perez has feel the vibe of the moment. And I feel like Emilia Perez has just continually gone downward and downward. I feel like I'm Still Here has continually gone upward. I know people will be like, Emilia Perez won the BAFTA. But the BAFTA awards were, I think, voted on, especially nomination-wise, before this whole I'm Still Here buzz happened. That's why its only nomination was international. It didn't get actress. It didn't get film. You look at the Oscars, it got Best Picture here. I think that says a lot. I think once you're in Best Picture, most people, hopefully, I think, will go out of the way to see at least the 10 Best Picture films. So I think most people have it. I think most people probably had not seen I'm Still Here up until that point, and I think most people probably have at this point. And it's really working for a lot of people. I feel like it gets really big emotional response out of people, and I just feel like with the amount of buzz and passion for this film that there's been throughout this entire season, this whole narrative, I just feel like it's gonna go away with something, and this is its best shot. So,
yeah, there's clearly passion for the movie. It was probably the biggest surprise of Oscar nomination morning, and it's not likely that passion has dissipated since it became a movie that it was required reading that everybody see because it was in Best Picture. You said that there's not a precedent for this, and while I agree there. Maybe recent memory, not a precedent in this category. What I'm looking at is Best Sound last year, because I think it was conventional wisdom that Oppenheimer, the movie with more nominations, and obviously a worthy winner in sound, was going to win. But people were leaning into Zone of Interest and really paying attention, and they were making their case for that movie. And then look what won. Zone of Interest won because it was a way to give it to a film that people wanted to see honored. And I could see the same thing happening with I'm Still Here. And for that reason, I think that during the voting period, I'm Still Here was probably surging more than Emilia Perez. And it's a beautiful film, so it's definitely deserving. So yeah, I do think that I'm Still Here will win, but I also would not be surprised because I do think if there's enough people who, if you vote for in song, you vote for Zoe Saldana, it has a presence on your ballot already. It would then make sense that maybe you also think that it should get international feature. It has the better, I do think it has the better, vehicle as far as Netflix getting eyes on it. It's really interesting. It's the narrative of Emilia Perez is going to be, its final page will be written on Sunday. And I am curious to see how people look at it, because I do think that what we're thinking is that it's kind of winning song by default. And Zoe Saldana is winning for her career. It's not, if it won this, then it would be interesting to see if people do look at the film as a great film apart from all the other Michigas.
Yeah. I also feel like when you look at these two films, I'm Still Here, 3 nominations, Emilia Perez 13. I feel like if you like I'm Still Here, and I feel like most people who see it seem to like it, and lots of people who see it seem to really love it. I feel like most people recognize this is the one place it's really got a shot to win. So if they want to show it love somewhere, it can all funnel into this category. Whereas, like you said, Emilia Perez also has like a song, it's got supporting actress, it's got other places where I think most people are like, it's gonna win that stuff. Let me give I'm Still Here some love here. So yeah, I think it's against all the odds and stuff, but it makes sense to me, I think. So
when has I'm Still Here not been against the odds at this season?
Yeah, that's true. Always against the odds and continually surprising. So I think it will continue as well on Sunday. Okay, we're done with the feature categories. Let's get into our screenplay categories. Let's start off with the easy one, adapted screenplay. We've got A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, and Sing Sing. And obviously up in the lead, adapted screenplay, 92% on KALSHI is Conclave. It just, I don't know, I'm not sure how much. Number 2, I do agree here, is Nickel Boys. But obviously we are both going with Conclave with Nickel Boys as the alternative. In a different world, Nickel Boys would be like women talking and have this be its one win. But unfortunately, I do think it is easily the best adaptation of the entire year. But I don't think that's going to happen. Conclave has won everything it could. So it's just going to be.
I don't think I have not read any of the things that it's adapting, so I couldn't tell you if it's the best adaptation. But yeah, this is the lock of the night. I think more than anything else, lock this in. Conclave is winning adapted screenplay.
Yeah. And it is interesting, especially because I have it in screenplay and editing. I think the last film that won that but didn't win Best Picture was Social Network. So it's been a minute. So
very different movies.
Very different, but both number 2 in Best Picture that year, I would say. So, which we'll get to in a second. Spoiler alert. Best Original Screenplay. This is the trickier one.
Right.
These are Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5, and The Substance. Over on Kalshi in the lead is Anora, but it's a close race. Anora's got 60%, A Real Pain's got 26%, and The Substance has 20%. So it's all very close there. I think those are your clear top 3 here. This is another last-minute change for Anthony. We'll have to see his arguments for the other ones, but we're both going with Anora. I can see either of the other ones winning. I think The Substance kind of had to win BAFTA for it to win here. It could still surprise here, but it did not win BAFTA. I kind of feel like I need to see it win BAFTA. Real Pain has been doing shockingly good here. It won the Independent Spirit Award. It won the BAFTA, which is crazy. It's got Jesse Eisenberg behind it, which I do think really helps.
BAFTA, it was not nominated for Best Picture, I believe. So that proves that it can win screenplay without picture. Now, granted, they have 5 nominations for Best Picture. We have 10, and it didn't make 10. And if it were to win screenplay while not being in Best Picture, that's only happened 3 times, and they all happened before in the 2000s. In 2000s. I
would say all of those winners would have been if it were year 10 in Best Picture as well.
Yes, so. Almost Famous, Talk to Her, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Funnily enough, it has not happened in adapted screenplay again since the year 2000. So in this century. It is rare, but I do think Jesse Eisenberg, being the writer, being the force behind this, starting this new career path for him, that has gotten him a lot of press. He's very charming. It's a great film, too. I think people really respond to it. It's doing very well. It's running away with supporting actor. I could see it happening. I just think that to win 2 Oscars in a year, there are going to be some Best Picture nominees that do not win a single Oscar. To imagine a world where A Real Pain wins both of its races, despite not getting into a top 10, is a little shocking. The other thing I'll just say is that I do think if you're doing safe money, let's say you're going to Kalshi and you're placing a bet.
Yeah.
Anora is likely to win director or screenplay, if not both. So if you want to cover your bases, then predict it in both. Because
and screenplay is much more predictive of picture. I can't think of the last film that won picture and director, but I think more often the picture winners win screenplay, and director can go outside of picture.
Yeah. And then as far as just looking at Anora's trajectory, in the preferential era, so post 2008, 3 films have won PGA, WGA, and DGA. So Producers, Writers, Director Guild. And they were The Hurt Locker, Argo, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Argo, of course, infamously, Ben Affleck was not in Best Director, but it won Picture and Screenplay. And Hurt Locker and Everything Everywhere won Picture, Director, Screenplay. So it is possible that it wins all top of these 3. So I just think in the end, it's safer to go Anora. But I really think the same way that you're having some apprehension towards editing with Anora, I could see the apprehension come here just because, I do think there's going to be fans for The Substance and A Real Pain. I think The Substance is looked at as the most original movie, and that tends to help this category. It also won the best screenplay at Cannes, so it started early. And it's interesting to see how much Cannes played into this with Substance and Anora doing so well. The categories, it's Anora versus The Substance, which we'll get to shortly. But I am really close to The Real Pain because I do think that could be one of the big surprises that nobody necessarily wants to go out on a limb and predict. But it's been winning screenplay awards. It's a beloved film. It's winning already, so it's on their radar in an above the line category. And I do think I would argue too that the reason why it didn't get to picture is that it wasn't deemed cinematic enough. I think there wasn't enough craft support, but I think everybody is pretty much been vocal about it is a great script. It's a very it's the type of movie that Woody Allen in his heyday would have made back in the 70s with Annie Hall. Like it fits right into that oeuvre. Peter Bogdanovich, like it fits into that sort of, form. So
Yeah.
I'm really, this is, I think, maybe the hardest one to call. But I'm going to go Anora. Again, I think it is the same.
It's interesting because Anora has not performed how you would expect a winner in this category to perform. It lost every time. I thought it was like a lost Critics' Choice, pretty much everywhere besides the WJ. It lost at the BAFTA, so it's not like it's been doing great. I think it did beat A Real Pain at the WJ, so I do think that does help. Substance was not eligible there, and it is the strongest film here, I would say. So it does make sense to go for it. It has not been the strongest performer, and it also, I think it depends on whether people like go down the ballot in terms of the films they like with Anora, or sometimes they want to spread the love and they're like, well, I'm giving Anora this and this, and I'm going to give A Real Pain or Substance this category. So we'll see. I think it's just going to be Anora, but
I also think that when we see the sort of movies that are able to trounce the Best Picture contender, The Father trouncing Nomadland, American Fiction trouncing Oppenheimer. It's a lot of times to say the word trounce in a row. But it's when there's one clear potential nominee to supersede it. With The Real Pain and The Substance splitting that position, I think that's why Nora goes through. If The Substance wasn't here, maybe Challengers was that fifth nomination. And I think A Real Pain could have done it. But I think the people who are looking elsewhere from Anora are splitting their votes share in those two directions. And that's why Anora can it's the Best Picture winner. Surprise. It can go all the way.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on to our acting categories. We've got a super easy one starting off. Supporting actor, Yuri Borisov, Kieran Culkin, Edward Norton, Guy Pearce, and Jeremy Strong. In Kalshi, this is pretty obvious up front. Kieran Culkin with 95%, then followed by Guy Pearce. Yeah, that's the highest one thus far. It makes sense. He's swept everything. We're both obviously going with him. It's who do you think number 2 even is at this point?
Funnily enough, it might be Jeremy Strong. It might be both Succession.
I honestly think so too. I think there's a lot of love for his performance.
Yeah.
So.
It's Kieran Culkin. It's moving on.
Congrats to him.
Deserved.
Yes, as well. Yeah. Supporting actress, another pretty easy one here. So we've got Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez. This is another high 90% one. Zoe Saldana on Kalshi in the lead with 93%, followed by Grande and Rossellini. Obviously, we agree as well. Both of these people have won all of the precursors. They are sweeping. It's pretty predictable. It'll be a great year for all lead performances winning in the acting categories. No supporting performances winning.
And I could make the argument that Demi Moore is more of a supporting performance than the other two.
You could easily make that argument. That's what's going on this year.
I would love if there was this sort of like Marissa Tomei type shocker win, and Ariana Grande could take it the last minute.
Is she even number 2? You think? I don't know.
She's number 2. I think
There's no proof of that though. No one else has won anything, so we don't know for sure.
I guess, but I don't know. I think there's enough. There's enough goodwill for her, but that's once we know the tallies, I guess you're right. We'll never find out. It's always Saldana. And she's a deserving actor. She's wonderful.
She's a great actress.
In the Avatar promotions, Academy Award, Zoe Saldana, and People's Choice Award, Sam Worthington, or whatever award he's nominated for. I'm sure he's won something.
Yeah. We'll just pretend that she won for the Avatar films is what we'll do. So that's supporting actress.
Her little part in The Terminal, Steven Spielberg's The Terminal. She's been around. She's earned a recognition of this stature.
Mm-hmm. And shout out, this entire award season, people have been coming for my neck because I've stuck to Zoe Saldana sweeping the entire time. And lots of people have switched over to Grande. And shout out to me for sticking for it, because lots of people have been aggressive towards me about thinking she's going to continue to win. So that's one thing I will brag about. Moving on.
Sure they'll love to see.
I'm sure they'll love to hear that. Yeah. They're still bringing up how Ariana Grande will now sweep next year for Wicked for Good. good luck with that is all I will say. Moving along to Best Actor in a Leading Role, we've got Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet for A Complete Unknown. Who else do we have here? We've got Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ray Fiennes for Conclave, and Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. Over on Kalshi, Adrian Brody is in the lead with 68%. He has gone down recently, obviously because of the SAG Awards. Number 2 is Timothy Chalamet with 32%. Those are obviously the two people who could win here. We're both going with Brody. Just kind of makes sense to me. He won everything during the voting period with BAFTA, Golden Globe, Critics' Choice. Timmy winning SAG just kind of feels like just a SAG thing to me, in my opinion. SAG clearly didn't like The Brutalist.
Respond to because the movie was more regarded.
And they didn't like The Brutalist. The Oscars clearly did like The Brutalist. They gave it 10 nominations.
And it's a demonstrative performance that I think gets the same reverence as Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer, Daniel Day-Lewis in about anything he does. You know, he is the movie. And it feels a little Renee Zellweger too. Like you won when you were young, and then you kind of went away for a little while, and then you came back. And I think that he will win. I would be pretty surprised if he didn't. I think this is Adrian Brody. And again, this is also where The Brutalist is going to have, for sure, above the line support. And it definitely, that is not, that's reasonable to think that it will have this sort of recognition.
Yeah. He's defending his title of the youngest actor to win here up against Timothy Chalamet, who would have beaten him. But yeah, he'll probably just
most acting. I think we can say.
That's the thing. I think biopic performances usually tend to be like the most acting, and in this case, Adrian Brody is doing a lot in this film, and Timothy Chalamet is much more subtle in A Complete Unknown. So,
which you can make the argument is harder in some ways, but I do think the degree of acting, the amount that he has to do Brody is, it's. In some regards, it's you can't debate against it. I do want to mention, because two of the blind Oscar ballots, that they didn't vote for Ray Fiennes because he already won. He did not win for Schindler's List. But that's what happens when you're so good for so long. People just assume you have an Oscar.
Yep, they do. He'll get one day, I'm sure, but not this day. So yeah. That is actor. Let's move on to the category in the acting categories that is easily the closest of the races. It is every year for some reason. The last time we had a sweep here was Renee Zellweger, so it continues to surprise. So actress in a leading role, we've got Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Mikey Madison for Nora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. Over on Kalshi in the lead, we've got Demi Moore with 65%, followed by Mikey Madison with 29%, and then Fernanda Torres with 7%. We are differing here. I am sticking with Mikey Madison for Nora, and you are going with Demi Moore for The Substance. Demi Moore makes sense. She's won 3 of the 4 major precursors. She's got the narrative behind her. I think you can really compare her to maybe Brendan Fraser for The Whale in a way. And Mikey Madison would be Austin Butler in that scenario. But also I remember last year when we were having these predictions, and I was so close. I believe even in the thumbnail, I had Emma Stone as my predicted winner. And I was so close to predicting her because this stuff I have been bringing up the last few years with this category is if it's not a sweep, which this year it's not, last year it was not, it goes to whoever is in the stronger film. And last year that was Emma Stone, Michelle Yeoh. You can keep going back and back. McDormand for Nomadland. It continually happens. It pretty much has not happened for the last decade plus. And in this case, Mikey Madison is in the Best Picture winner, and Demi Moore is not. She's in the weaker film. So I told myself last year after I didn't go with Stone and I went with Gladstone that I'm not going to go against that if I was in that situation again. So I'm sticking with what I've had, which is Mikey Madison for Nora, but I don't feel super confident about it. But I feel like a Nora, you have to look at it like a decent win package for it. And I feel like depending on what you have, like if you don't have editing or you don't have screenplay, I feel like Mikey Madison probably should come along. She is a Nora. So that's what I'm going with. You're going with Demi Moore.
If this was her second nomination, I might agree with you. But I think she's too much of an ingenue. This is too much of a, we've just met you. That's why I think the Austin Butler comparison is very apt. Her Once Upon a Time in Hollywood co-star. Moore used the Golden Globes better than anybody I've ever seen. That speech and how she framed her narrative is very strong. I do think she has the strongest narrative out of any of these potential winners. Not just in this category, but beyond. And I do think The Substance fared much better than The Whale and much better than some of the other times that we've had upsets. I mean, Killers of the Flower Moon did not get a screenplay nomination where The Substance did on top of directing and picture. I also think that...
I will say, though, it didn't get Quali, and everywhere that they didn't nominate Quali so far, she hasn't won, and everywhere that they did nominate Quali, she has won. So
it's an interesting stat. So listen, it's very close, and I do think that Mikey Madison could, because she just comes along with being the title character in the Best Picture winner. It would make sense, Best Picture winners winning acting awards do make sense. It's happened every
last
time.
4 years.
Yeah, last
Since
4 years.
Parasite.
Yeah, and Parasite was an anomalous year because, of course, it was an international cast. So if we use that logic,
Shape of Water.
Then Shape of Water.
And Shape of Water is a good comparison for Anora, I would say, where it wins the American Guilds, but it doesn't win BAFTA and Golden Globe stuff. So it makes sense.
It doesn't have a presence at SAG either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think in the end, I think Demi Moore is just really she's endeared herself to the voting public. And I do think that there's more of a reason to want to see her win. I think when you look at the times that like ingenues win, like they represent something. They represent this new age for, talent in the industry. I just don't know what Mikey Madison, like how she's defined herself apart from Anora, and where Demi Moore has certainly done that on top of giving her all in a performance that, people can see how muscular it is. It's very vulnerable. I think it's the type of performance that really surprises people. And also, if we're going with the trend of the past couple of years, it definitely fits in the mold of Michelle Yeoh and of Emma Stone. So you could make the argument that maybe then they want to switch it up. But it could just be that's what they're in the mood for, and they're in for performances that are about the kind of this new liberation of how women are depicting aging, their physical appearance, and taking ownership into their lives. So I'm going to go Demi Moore. I do think there's a lot of love for the substance. They're going to want to see it recognized. It has the makeup correlation.
It does, yeah.
And she's been around for people our age, I think it's a little, we don't have the memory of this, but she was a bona fide movie star with a capital M at one point. I mean, she was the star of the movie that was the inspiration for one of the most shocking Oscar moments of all time with G.I. Jane. So I think she like Zoe Saldana, she's paid her dues.
Wouldn't you say that the Oscars will like Anora more than the BAFTA awards with the wins?
Will they like Anora more with the win? Well, clearly, because it's going to win Best Picture.
It's going to win Picture, Director, Screenplay. And I feel like if the BAFTAs who don't like Anora as much as I think the Academy will end up liking it, they still gave it to Mikey Madison. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but then I wonder whether BAFTA gave it to Mikey Madison because it was the place to honor Anora, and they don't feel that way here. Because I would grant you, Anora might be shaping up like Shape of Water. It also might be shaping up like Birdman, where Birdman had 2 Oscar nominations in the three. Edward Norton, Emma Stone, and then Michael Keaton. And Michael Keaton did not win despite being Birdman. And that was because they just felt that there were other performances that were maybe a little flashier, which I would argue that Demi Moore and Eddie Redmayne were flashier performances than Michael Keaton and Mikey Madison, respectively. And that's the movie won Picture, Director, Screenplay, Cinematography in the case of Birdman, and that they just felt, let's give it to, we want to spread the love. So there's going to be, you can make comps for anything. You can say Demi Moore is Brendan Fraser, Renee Zellweger, and, she's going up against something like the Birdman year. But you can also say that, she's somebody who misses out at the last minute. You could say the Lily Gladstone argument, you just got to go off of the vibes. And I just think there are more people talking about Demi Moore. I think when people talk about Anora, they lead with Sean Baker. When they talk about Demi Moore, the substance, they lead with Demi Moore. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's totally fair. It's close. I feel like she won the Critics' Choice because she won the Golden Globe. So I don't know. I feel like it's very close. I feel like also Anora ends on Mikey Madison's strongest point, whereas Demi Moore kind of disappears for the third act of the substance.
But if anything, that kind of helps. You have to be strong at the beginning. I think, as we've seen many a time, performances that have their best moments at the end.
I think Rami Malek won for his ending of his film.
That's one scene. That's the only thing that people remembered. But like Robert De Niro in The Irishman, we were like, his best moments are in the wake of the film. But if you don't get to the wake of the film, are you seeing his great performance? I just think that, like, because she starts, like I've talked about this with Marriage Story. Scarlett Johansson disappears for a large part of that movie, but because the first 40 minutes is her point of view and it starts with her, that's what solidifies her as a co-lead. And so I think Demi Moore starting the movie, and the movie really being...
I would say she's a co-lead, though. I'd say like ScarJo, she's a co-lead, and Mikey Madison is the lead.
Yeah, it's fair. It's It's why I'll always wonder what Viola Davis could
They
have
don't
done.
give it to co-leads really either. That's why Viola Davis didn't win for Ma Rainey. Recently, like Emma Stone is Poor Things. Lily Gladstone, you could say, was a co-lead in a way, even though I said she was supporting.
She should have been supporting.
Michelle Yeoh was
Viola Davis, you could have made, it was a little bit more up in the air. Lily Gladstone,
she didn't win.
Was a supporting performance. She was in like 27% of the movie.
Yeah.
I'll always wonder what Viola Davis would have done if she went lead for Fences and she had to go up against Emma Stone.
She probably would have won.
It would have been very interesting, because well, people would have made the argument that it's the Best Picture winner. Emma Stone has to win, but then we know what happened.
Actually, yeah. Emma Stone might have still won, especially given their track record for Black women in that category.
Yeah.
We'd be remiss to not mention, though, I think the clear number 3 here is Fernanda Torres. She has the only place she has gone up against these two actresses is the Golden Globe Awards. She had no opportunity.
She really had no opportunity because she was in a different category.
Oh, no, that's true. She hasn't gone up against them at all. And she hasn't had an opportunity to be competitive with them post I'm Still Here surge, post getting into Best Picture and more people seeing it. So there's really no way of telling how strong she is in comparison to these other two, but they are in the much more stronger films and they have been out there more. They've both been giving speeches. Fernanda Torres did give one speech, but it was further back. So I think it's possible. I think she's a definite dark horse here to potentially win. But I still feel like it'll probably be
just faded away. Like there's been just no conversation about maintaining her relevance in this race.
She has the most traditional performance here to win, though, like the biopic performance. I feel like
this doesn't feel like yes, Oppenheimer looks like other Best Picture winners, but I feel like this is a decade for a lack of tradition. Go out there,
substance. Emilia Perez, yeah, for sure.
Even Honora, I continue to think Honora is not like this is a just look at Sean Baker hasn't really changed how he makes movies. And a decade ago, his movies were struggling to connect. Now they are like Oscar darlings, winning all the guilds. I think, being not looking traditional, I think is helping a lot of contenders.
Yeah, for sure. So that's actress. That's what we're going with there. If I were to place a Kalshi bet, this is where I would place my bet. This is where I would place my Kalshi bet. These last two ones, I think we can be quicker on. Best Director, we've got Honora, Sean Baker, The Brutalist, Brady Corbet, A Complete Unknown, James Mangold, Emilia Perez, Jack Audiard, and The Substance, Coralie Farjah. And we're both going with Sean Baker and the odds on Kalshi. He's out front. This is a close one. He's up front with 65%, and number 2 is Corbet with 34%. It is obviously going to be one of those two. The DGA is much more consistent in terms of like who wins at the DGA than winning at the Oscars than either BAFTA or Golden Globes. And I feel like Honora is strongest compared to, obviously didn't do well at the Golden Globes, and it's not as strong at the BAFTAs as I think it will be here. And Sean Baker has just, I think at the end of the day, why Corbet is not winning, even though I think lots of people see it as more like a directing achievement. Sean Baker's been around longer. He's been more established in the industry. It's seen as more like his time, his moment. He continues to work. I think he's a big champion of the whole independent scene, as we saw in his Independent Spirit Awards speech, how he's continued to remain an independent film director, even though opportunities may have come up for other things, and how he has really championed that space. I feel like he's just more established in the industry, and he directed the stronger film, and he won the DGA. I feel like that's all you really need to stick with him over Corbet.
I agree. Emphasize. Moving on to
that's pretty simple.
More straightforward category.
Yeah, agreed. Our final one, Best Picture. Our nominees are Honora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. And once again, in the odds, pretty expected up front, we have Honora with 66%, and number 2 is Conclave with 23%. I do think it is obviously down to those two. We are both going with Honora. I feel like the SAG BAFTA combo is weaker than PGA, DGA, WGA. I think the only film that has won all of those and then lost the Oscar is Brokeback Mountain. So it'd be pretty rare company for Honora to be in there.
Era, and that, of course, had a lot of political connotation.
It did.
That unfortunately does not look too good in the rearview mirror. So yeah, I think Honora for sure. I think it has enough above the line support, potentially like all the above the line craft support that you need. That is there. I feel it's funny. I think editing should maybe be considered above the line sometimes. I feel we should go back and see how often, like the fact when everything
it's
ever
usually
won,
the top 5.
yeah, it's like I feel like it's worth mentioning. But yeah, I think that yeah, it's just proven to be the film that, as I said, is the most inoffensive. It's capturing the hearts and minds of people. It appeals to a lot of different types of voters. It appeals to the independent-leaning people. It appeals to the people that I think really respond to, you know, a very handsome product that's not really challenging them. You know, it's entertaining. It's, you know, Sean Baker definitely has people talking about cinema as an art form. It's hitting a lot of boxes, and it's a comedy. It's a drama. It's everything in between. It's a Nora. Best Picture.
Yeah. I think Conclave winning SAG did make it closer, I would say. I think SAG and BAFTA is a strong combo. I don't want to completely, especially if it's also winning like screenplay and editing, I don't want to completely say it doesn't have a shot. It is the clear number 2. But yeah, I agree. Nora just seems like, especially on a preferential ballot, we've talked about this before. It'll do well. I think it's one of like the few films that like no one hates here, which obviously helps on a preferential ballot. I think Conclave is also one of those films, but I think Nora gets a lot more number 1s than Conclave does. I think Conclave is consistently like 3, 4, 5, whereas Nora I think will be consistently in the top 5 and also a lot of people's number 1s, which obviously helps. So.
And I think I do think if you're going to choose between which film is more polarizing, like what's going to get more 10s, unless we're in a La La Land situation where people do not want to see a Nora win, so they put it 10th. I do think that's Conclave, because I do think the most polarizing thing between the two movies is the ending, the twist of Conclave.
Yeah. I don't think Ben Shapiro made a video on a Nora. He did make one on Conclave. So, yep.
Is that really how we're ending this video?
Yeah, no. Well, I guess. So those are our predictions in all these categories. If you had to place a KALSHI bet on any of your predictions, Anthony, what would you place it on? Prime real estate.
On something that maybe this documentary feature, that might be my KALSHI bet.
Yeah. Well, you're going with porcelain now, right?
Yes. So you swayed me.
That was the sway. Yeah, I actually might do that too, honestly, because that's again, you got to go against the odds to really benefit. You could go with flow.
I feel like if I could have gotten you to flow, I feel like maybe. But I'm going to go with the answer.
I would really love to do Flow. It's one of my top 5 favorite films of the year. I love it so much. But I just maybe it's also just me like being like, I'll go with like what I think will happen also. Like if I predict Flow and then it doesn't happen, I'll be disappointed. If I predict Wild Robot and then Flow happens, I'll be happy. I think it happens every year. There'll be one of these categories that's just a big surprise that will be fun to watch.
Look out for Screenplay. I do think it's likely that those other two cancel each other out, but I could see it happening.
Could be Screenplay. Yeah, I don't know. It could be Flow.
Score. Look out for Score. These people might not have made it to Broadway. They might not know what's original.
Yeah, that's true. I was also editing and sound. I would look out for Wicked in both of those. So that's all I'm gonna say.
What world are we?
We switched. You're rooting for Flow. I'm going hard for Wicked. Has a shot at screenplay or not screenplay, editing and sound. So yeah, that's how long the season has gone on. We're switching roles. So yeah, comment your guys' final predictions. What are your big swings? What would you take bets on KALSHI? Once again, if you want to be a winner this award season, go bet on KALSHI on, especially your bold predictions, your big swings, and then you will benefit from those happening because there are always things that are in the odds that end up not happening. So you can go do that. Use code OscarFilmFC. Yeah, comment your predictions, like the video, subscribe, and we're Oscar as of the day of releasing this video 4 days away. So stick around. We'll have plenty to talk about at the end of all of this. What an interesting season to look back on at the end of it all. So you want to subscribe to stay tuned for that video and all that stuff. And then 2026 Oscar predictions right afterwards, immediately the day after. Yeah, that is the end of the video, guys. Comment your 2026 predictions down below. Okay, bye everyone.